Hello and welcome to Brain Power. I'm your host Thomas Trombley and we'll be discussing topics ranging from current news, world events, and religion. Basically whatever bit of news that catches my eye. If you have a story you'd like covered here or a question you'd like answered, send me a message on Twitter at BrainPowerUp. Use the hashtag BrainPowerUp, like the group at facebook.com/BrainPowerOnline, or visit the website at brainpoweronline.webs.com. Today is Sunday, June 21st, Father's Day for everybody who's paying attention to the calendars. So make sure you call your dad today, or your grandfather, or whatever, anybody that you happen to know who's a father, and let them know how much you appreciate them. Anyway, on to the news. Where are we going to start off here? How about... Hey, I know, Wal-Mart's back in the news today. Well, this was actually a few days ago, but, I feel like I can report on it today. The war between community organizations and Wal-Mart rages on. More than a dozen groups from across the country filed a complaint with the IRS against the retail giant's charitable arm yesterday, alleging that the Wal-Mart Foundation is under the company's thumb and has repeatedly violated its tax-exempt status, according to the New York Times. Specifically, the charity is accused of funneling its donations to causes in cities where the company sought to expand in hopes of eroding opposition there, ultimately providing Wal-Mart more than an incidental benefit. The complaint gives this example. Wal-Mart donations to Los Angeles groups were only $200,000 in 2008 and 2009, but rose to $1.4 million when the company planned to open a new store in the area in 2011. The store opened in 2013, and donations dropped down to $230,000. A Walmart spokesperson says the foundation takes the Internal Revenue Code and regulations very seriously, and the allegations have no merit. It's unfortunate to see criticism of the foundation's charitable giving, the spokesperson adds. That giving included $1.4 billion during the last fiscal year. But the director of one group that signed the complaint characterizes the donations as a smoke and mirrors campaign. The head of New York Communities for Change, which also joined the complaint, tells the Times, I think what we say is that they bought people's support. It is direct lobbying, what they were doing, advocating on behalf of Walmart's business interests. It's it's one of those where, Walmart is obviously openly denying that this is happening, but if somebody's got the numbers that says, hey, look, you only spent this much when you didn't care, but when all of a sudden you decided, hey, let's move in here, and then you start blasting money into the area. My goodness. And then when you finally get that store there, finally get that thing that you wanted, then you kind of pull back from blasting that money. It could be a coincidence that things just happen to line up in time like that, but really, that's too strong of a coincidence. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but really, I mean, damn. Speaking of damn and stupid, Texas is also in the news. Texas lawmakers on Friday approved carrying handguns openly on the streets of the nation's second most populous state, sending the bill to Republican Governor Greg Abbott, who immediately promised to sign it and reverse a ban dating to the post-Civil War era. Gun owners would still have to get a license to carry a handgun in a visible holster. The state, known for its Wild West cowboy history and some of the nation's most relaxed gun laws, has allowed concealed handguns for 20 years. Concealed handgun license holders are even allowed to skip the metal detectors at the state capitol as state troopers providing security simply assume that they're armed. But Texas was one of only 6 states with an outright ban on so-called open carry, and advocates have fought to be allowed to keep their guns in plain sight. Cast as an important expansion of the Second Amendment, it became a major issue for the state's strong Republican majority. We think of Texas being gun-happy, but we didn't afford our citizens the same right most other states do. The House voted along party lines, 102 to 43, drawing gleeful whistles from some lawmakers. Soon after, the Senate passed it 20 to 11, also along party lines. But Democrats like Senator Rodney Ellis of Houston say they fear violence on the streets. I hope we don't have a lot of Texans running around with a Rambo mentality, Ellis says. Now, I don't think that there will be a lot of Texans running around with a Rambo mentality, because, if you watch the Rambo movies, Rambo only shoots the bad guys. Rarely pulls out his gun. And matter of fact, he's more fond of his knife than anything else. No, if anything, I get the distinct feeling we'll see a lot of Yosemite Sams showing up. I mean, hell, half the people down there already dress and talk like Yosemite Sam. I'm the rootinest, tootinest gunslinger in the West. Well, and it's, realistically, open carry, I don't think will be really different from concealed carry. I don't know, and it's, I can see a lot of people getting nervous. Because, if you see a person walking down the street and they've got a pistol on their hip, and it's just sitting there right there in plain view, I don't know. Some people would get nervous, and others may feel more safe, I guess. But I don't see any point to open carry when concealed carry does exactly what you need it to do. Just my personal opinion, I guess. And speaking of stupid states, Texas isn't the only one. Well, actually, I don't know if you can really call this a stupid move on on the position of the state. Anyway, Nebraska no longer has the death penalty. State lawmakers overrode the governor's veto of legislation to abolish it by a vote of 30 to 19, getting the precise number of votes necessary to do so. The move to defy Governor Pete Ricketts makes Nebraska the first Republican-controlled state in the U.S. to repeal the death penalty since North Dakota in 1973. It joins 18 other states that have banned capital punishment. Opponents of the move wasted little time after the vote, however. State Senator Bo McCoy unveiled a group called Nebraskans for Justice that will explore the possibility of a ballot initiative to reinstate the death penalty. Nebraska currently has 10 men on death row. An 11th died on Sunday of natural causes, notes the AP. But they now have de facto life sentences because the state can no longer execute people. Pardon. Now, I personally, I'm kind of torn when it comes to the death penalty. Realistically, I don't know, coming at it from a humanist perspective, I don't see there really being any cause for me to take the life of another human being or for anyone to take another human's life. I really don't see much of a cause for that. But, there is that financial side of me that looks at things and realizes, okay, however much the lethal injection cocktail costs, let's say it's incredibly expensive, and let's call it $1,000, even though a simple syringe full of Drano would do the trick. Let's just say it costs $1,000. That's still $1,000 that you only have to pay once versus food, room, and board for this prisoner for the rest of their life. So, I don't know. I mean, once again, as usual, it's it's just my personal opinion. Um, yeah. So, let's check this one out here. Uh, there's there's some new military technology coming around for anybody that's interested in that kind of thing. An incredible super bullet, dreamed up in 2008, is now a reality. The Pentagon's DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, reveals it has created a self-steering bullet that can change its own course in midair to hit a moving target. In a video released by DARPA, a sniper fires at a target that moves out of the bullet's predicted path. In response, the bullet follows and finds the moving target. Even an inexperienced shooter was able to hit the mark. Program manager Jerome Dunn says the program, labeled Extreme Accuracy Tasked Ordnance, or EXACTO, has demonstrated what was once thought impossible, the continuous guidance of a small caliber bullet to target. Few details about the technology have been made public, but it involves special ammunition and an optical guidance system that directs the bullets according to weather conditions, movement, and more. The idea is that it could help snipers battling difficult conditions such as heavy winds in Afghanistan and allow for quicker shots. Dunn calls making all this work in a 50 caliber bullet a major breakthrough and predicts advances in other sizes down the road. Though there may be concern about the technology reaching U.S. streets, Popular Science notes that the weaponry will likely be way too expensive for private citizens. It isn't clear when the X-Acto technology will be used in the field. Now, I don't know, personally, I think this is kind of interesting, because it's just like a heat-seeking missile, basically. It's fire and forget, that kind of thing. It's kind of cool, but at the same time, the only concern that they pick up here is, that it could eventually reach U.S. streets, which, yes, don't get me wrong, that's a huge concern. But what also would concern me would be, let's say, an ISIS group or an Al-Qaeda group or whatever, some other group we haven't even met yet, somehow gets a hold of a bunch of these weapons. They could make the easy shots too. And that's really the problem. It's every time that somebody builds a bigger, better weapon, there's always a chance that your enemy will get a hold of it. And it's that simple. Speaking of weapons and such, moving on to my new favorite section, the Asshole of the Week. And the sad part is this one, I don't know, I think this guy actually deserves the title Asshole of the Century. And that's really saying something considering we just started the century 15 years ago. Vladimir Putin. Putin is being accused of saber rattling, which isn't all that unusual, except, in this case, it involves nuclear weapons. The Russian leader said today that Moscow would add at least 40 ICBMs to its nuclear arsenal this year. The announcement comes after the U.S. said it planned to station tanks and heavy weaponry in NATO states in Eastern Europe on the Russian border. Putin boasted that the new ICBMs would be able to overcome the most advanced defense systems, reports the BBC. This nuclear saber rattling of Russia is unjustified, it's destabilizing, and it's dangerous, says NATO Secretary General. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that name. I'm just going to mangle it to hell. He says Russia's increasing aggressions, especially in the Ukraine, explain why NATO is beefing up its Eastern European defenses. But Russian Deputy Defense Chief Anatoly Antonov, citing the U.S. plan, says, "Our colleagues from NATO countries are pushing us into an arms race." it's yes, that's really the big issue, that there is an arms race that's obviously going on right now. For anybody old enough to remember, in the early to mid 50s, there was a big arms race going on back then between the United States and Russia, which led to the Cold War, which was, what, 40 years long? Good God. The problem is here, all the signs are pointing towards it happening again. The biggest problem is this shouldn't be happening. Both the United States and Russia, we've already gone through reduction processes. There's the START Treaty and then the START II Treaty, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which, it's exactly what it says. We're trying to cut down the number of nuclear weapons we have pointed at each other's necks. This is just unreal. There is no reason whatsoever for this prick to be adding nuclear weapons. It's just my opinion, I guess. I don't know. He's the next Saddam. That's my point of view. But I shouldn't say he's the next Saddam. He's maybe the next Saddam. He's in there because we've got the next Saddam right now in North Korea. Speaking of nukes and North Korea, China warned us. Less than a month after North Korea says that it fired a missile off of a submarine, the country's National Defense Commission is now claiming it can craft mini nuclear weapons that fit on the tips of such missiles. A North Korean newspaper reports, "We have had the capability of miniaturizing nuclear weapons, as well as producing multiform weapons for some time," reads a statement from the Korean Central News Agency per CNN. "We can also guarantee the accuracy of not only of short to mid-range, but also long-range rocket missiles, for which we have had the technology for a long time. Even though North Korea is known for its chest-thumping and unverifiable claims, this particular one about weapons miniaturization is believable to U.S. military officials who've been keeping tabs on the situation. 3 main steps are involved in building and launching a nuke-carrying ICBM, that's Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. Creating the mini-weapons in the first place, as well as ensuring that they're strong enough to endure the long flight and solid enough to make it through re-entry." And Jeffrey Lewis, an arms expert who writes for a North Korea watchdog blog, believes Pyongyang can carry out all 3, per CNN. However, the reliability and accuracy of such missiles is still up in the air, Lewis adds. Meanwhile, the vice chair of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff counters that North Korea is still many years from submarine-launched ICBMs. He believes that photos of the recently reported launch were doctored. "They've not gotten as far as their clever video editors and spinmeisters would have us believe," Admiral James Winnefeld said. And it's, once again, this is the idea of why ramp up your nuclear weapons program? I mean, really the only reason, there's the old saying that peace means having a bigger stick than the other guy. Okay, that it's an exceptionally archaic concept, but I can understand where you'd be coming from if you think that. The problem is, when everybody else already has the big sticks, and you pick up a big stick, you're basically saying, hey, you know what, I want to fight. That's the only thing that they're doing here. It's just saying, hey, we can build missiles, we can build intercontinental missiles, we can nuke you off the face of the earth. Yeah, you're just asking for us to nuke you. Basically, that's it. It's terrifying times we live in these days. I mean, it's people don't think about it as much. Everybody's worried about ISIS or ISIL or whatever the hell you want to call them. Everybody's worried about Al Qaeda. Don't get me wrong; those are legitimate concerns, and we do have to be worried about them. But people forget about the problems with other countries. We've got Russia to deal with because, well, Putin's a fucking dumbass. We've got North Korea to deal with because, Kim Jong-un doesn't poop. It's anytime that a leader has a fanatical following of any kind, nothing good can come of it. It's nothing but danger. Just my personal opinion. And the opinion of history. Anyway, moving on to a slightly different topic. This one, the headline, is what really got me, and it shocked me. Like, what? But reading the story through, and it makes sense, and I think I would agree with him. The headline says, Stephen Hawking, I would consider assisted suicide. Once again, I thought, what? What the hell? He's thinking about killing himself? But anyway, it goes on. The man who showed the world exactly why he was meant to live, despite a devastating diagnosis 52 years ago, now says he'd think about assisted suicide, but only under certain circumstances. In an interview set to be broadcast on BBC in mid-June, which, by the way, this story was actually from June 5th, so I'm assuming the story was aired already. What do we got? Here we go. Stephen Hawking says, I would consider assisted suicide only if I were in great pain or felt I had nothing more to contribute but was just a burden to those around me. To keep someone alive against their wishes is the ultimate indignity. Hawking has spoken before about his support for assisted suicide, notably in a BBC interview last year in which he said, we should not take away the freedom of the individual to choose to die, and admitted he had tried to kill himself once by not breathing after a tracheotomy. Tracheostomy. Not quite sure what the difference is there. He says, the reflex to breathe was too strong, he noted. Assisted suicide is still illegal in the UK, though The Guardian notes the Department of Public Prosecutions wouldn't likely prosecute family or friends who helped a loved one end his or her own life. But the world doesn't have to worry about losing Hawking just yet. The 73-year-old says he's not really in pain, just discomfort when he wants to adjust positions. And he tells the program's interviewer that he's still got a lot to offer. I'm damned if I'm going to die before I've unraveled more of the universe, he says, per The Guardian. But the paper notes Hawking also advocates for euthanasia safeguards, and has pointed out he thought he wanted to die in 1985 after a particularly brutal bout with pneumonia. His then-wife Jane wouldn't disconnect his life support. His best-selling A Brief History of Time came out 3 years later. By the way, just a random side bet, for anybody who is at all interested in life, the universe, and everything else, to quote Douglas Adams there, I would greatly recommend picking up this book. It is actually an amazing book. I've read it myself. Very insightful. It's not really difficult to read for the uninitiated. It's good for pretty much anybody. Anybody can pick it up and enjoy it. Unless of course, you're a Catholic and you believe, the earth was created in 7 days. Yeah. So, moving on. Here's kind of an interesting story. Jury awards $21 million after mistaken brain surgery. An 81-year-old Michigan woman went to the hospital for a relatively simple jaw procedure and ended up having brain surgery because of a mix-up in CT scans. Bimla Nayar. I, I apologize greatly if I mangled that name, and I'm quite certain I did. Bimla Nayar never recovered and died 2 months after the 2012 procedure, reports the Detroit News. Now, a jury has awarded her family $21 million over what its attorney calls the most shocking abuse I've ever seen. Oakwood Hospital plans to appeal, saying, "We're very concerned about how the details of this case have been portrayed, but it did not elaborate because the case is still in the courts." Nayar's family maintains that hospital workers mixed up her CT scan with one from another patient who actually did need brain surgery. Attorney Jeffrey Feger says doctors removed the right side of her skull and poked around in her brain before realizing they had the wrong patient. The family also accuses the hospital of trying to cover up the mistake. The size of the award is remarkable given the patient's age, suggesting that the family made a strong case. An attorney not involved tells the Detroit Free Press. You know, it's one of those, like, really? I just love the incompetence of the hospital staff here. First out, how easy is it to screw up and mix up CT scans? I'm terrified of this idea. I mean, I don't want to go into the hospital for something minor and then have brain surgery. My goodness, no. It brings to mind an episode of Married with Children where Al, the father of the house, went into the hospital, and I remember on his chart it said that he required a circular incision. He ended up going home with a circumcision. You know, there is no trust left in the medical system, and that's a terrifying thought. For example, there's a joke going around right now to show you the idea of how bad the medical system is here in America. There was a big smash blockbuster hit television series about a guy who ended up having to make and sell meth in order to pay off his medical bills. It's Breaking Bad, for those of you who don't know. It's shameful that things like this happen. In quite literally life and death situations, as is evidenced here by this patient who got unnecessary brain surgery, there really is no excuse. This is just not right, and it's, really, I mean, the hospital should just own up to it. Just my opinion. Anyway, speaking of brains, here's kind of an odd one. There's nothing like walking outside your door one day and stumbling on 9 brains. That's the grisly sight that baffled residents of a village in upstate New York this week. People discovered the brains on a street near railroad tracks in Gouverneur. It looks like a French version of the word governor. Gouverneur, New York, and called the cops, who took them to a veterinarian who says they are likely dog brains removed by a professional and kept in formaldehyde. "We measured and weighed the specimen," veterinarian Tim Monroe tells 7 News. "It comes out to about 70 grams, which would be consistent with a dog-sized brain." An assistant professor at Clarkston University says they could be sheep brains, which are more commonly used in dissection laboratories, she tells the North Country Now. "They look more like sheep brains to me, so what the..." Well, people do buy animal brains, like cow and sheep, for eating purposes, and dog brains can be bought by people in an educational setting, Monroe says. According to a Gouverneur police sergeant, the crime amounts to littering, but he has no leads. An animal advocate figures someone just tossed the brains off a train. "It goes by quite often," she says. "It's just a sick prank somebody did. They'll probably never find out who did it." See, that's kind of interesting to me. I don't know. It's sick and twisted, but uh, I'm just curious who did it. Was it some guy, let's say some biology teacher with these brains taking them to his school classroom for the students to dissect, and he dropped them and didn't realize it, and by the time he realized it was too late, he said, "Oh my God, no! I left the brains on the street!" Or was it like they say here, and some punk kid just thought it'd be funny to throw him off a train? Um, I'm sure there's other possible explanations too, so I don't pretend to know. I'm guessing. I'm just speculating like anybody else. Anyway, here's something kind of interesting. British high school student Tom Wagg already has a line on his resume most of us can only dream of. While interning at Kiel University 2 years ago, the then 15-year-old found what looked to be a planet. Telescopes in Chile were used to take a deeper look, and now astronomers in Switzerland and Belgium have confirmed his find. Specifically, Tom discovered an exoplanet the size of Jupiter in the constellation Hydra, some 1,000 light years away, and he did it right out of the gate. It was just my third day when I spotted what looked like a good candidate, but I had already gone through more than 1,000 sets of data by then, Tom tells the BBC. It looks boring, but when you think about what you're actually doing, it's amazing, really. The BBC explains that Tom didn't make the find via telescope, but rather poring over data collected by the Wide-Angle Search for Planets, WASP, telescope. He was looking for dips in brightness that might indicate a planet passing in front of its star. The one he spotted has for now been called WASP 142b, so called because it's the 142nd planet found by the UK-led WASP, reports Gizmodo. A competition has been established to settle on a name, and Tom says he plans to submit a contender. Let's hope his is given serious consideration. Kiel University notes in a press release that while astronomers worldwide have now found over 1,000 extrasolar planets, Tom is possibly the youngest ever to have done so. Now, once again, I think that's pretty awesome. Um, Realistically, if you look at it, the chances of us finding another Earth are pretty good. We've already found a couple pretty decent candidates. This one they said is like Jupiter size, so that's not exactly like Earth. Even if it was solid and rocky and, we had a solid ground to stand on, just the sheer size of that planet would be so massive, the gravity would be so massive that we would be crushed standing on its surface. It just wouldn't be safe. But, realistically, I mean, I think the WASP project is probably going to be the quickest way that we're going to find a new home, basically. Realistically, I don't think any time in my lifetime, I don't think we'll make it to another planet. I mean, no, we'll make it to Mars, I'm sure, in my lifetime. We may even potentially, by the time I'm an old geezer, we might make it to like some of Jupiter's or Saturn's moons. I think that'd be kind of cool. But, yeah, I don't think we're going to leave our solar system anytime soon. Once again, just my opinion. Anyway, what do we got here? Mentone. Once again, I'm probably mispronouncing this, but at least this time it's not a person's name. Mentone, a popular vacation destination on top of Alabama's Lookout Mountain, is more closely associated with the words retreat, paradise, and idyllic than with murder. But, as AL.com puts it, that paradise was shattered on Friday when police received a 911 call to a local home and found 45-year-old Sherry Ann bludgeoned to death in her backyard, and her son, 22-year-old Tyler Blancett, who placed the 911 call. He eventually confessed to the crime. What provoked the attack? Mother and son fighting over his grades at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Tyler reportedly told police his dad was said to have been at work at the time of the killing. Tyler Blancett has since been charged with murder and is being held in the DeKalb County Detention Center. When police first showed up at the Blancett home on Friday, they found a crime scene that Mentone Police Chief Brad Gregg described as brutal, AL.com reports. Tyler initially told cops that he and his mom had been attacked, offering up his own scratches and bump on the head as evidence. But Tyler admitted later on to hitting his mother. DeKalb County Sheriff Jimmy Harris tells AL.com, Sherry Blancett appeared to have died from blunt force trauma to the head, and a baseball bat that cops believe was the murder weapon is being tested. Harris tells WAFF that investigators are still looking for clues as to why Tyler, the Blancett's only child, may have snapped. Usually we'll have calls where a parent has whipped a child because of grades, a child has run away because of bad grades, but we've never had anything like this happen. And that is kind of an odd thing to have happen, I guess. That's just... Really? That's weird. And, of course, everybody knew it was coming. The religious aspect of this. Or the religious aspect of the show, not of that most recent story. As the U.S. Supreme Court prepares to hand down what could be a historic ruling on gay marriage this month, in Michigan, there's an effort underway that would put some legal obstacles in its way. Republican Representative Todd Courser from Laper County says one of the bills would require that a clergy member sign any marriage certificate in Michigan. I'm completely traditional marriage. I believe that the traditional marriage is really God's model for marriage. I don't believe that government has a role in it, says Courser. Courser tells News Radio 950 that he expects court challenges should his bills become law. It would take the idea of officiating marriages out of the hands of the elected officials and put it back into the hands of those in ministry. The contract that has been in place for thousands of years is between a man and his wife on one side and God on the other side. He expounds on his Michigan House Representative website. Regina Regina C. from the group Michigan for Marriage says mandating religious marriages just won't fly. This is a blatant violation of our Constitution, and it is offensive to think that people can use their faith as a weapon like that, says Regina. I have countless leaders who are very much in support of their freedom to marry. They are currently having their religious freedom undermined by the fact that the state won't allow them to marry same-sex couples. Under the legislation noted as House Bills 4731, 4732, and 4733, the licensing components of marriage would remain a government responsibility, but municipal and judicial officials would no longer have the ability to perform wedding ceremonies. The bills protect public officials from being forced to perform same-sex marriages. Yeah, that's... all this is the drowning man reaching out for anything he can hold on to. Basically, it's religion itself is on its way to being overturned, which is going to be a huge win. Even for the religious people, they just, they're not far-sighted enough to see it. They can't look that far ahead. Personally, I long for the day when religion is not granted any special rights or freedoms, but you still have the right to practice your own religion. Of course, I mean, I do not advocate for, the disbanding of religion and religious organizations. I think all religions are stupid, but at the same time, as long as you practicing your religion does not affect me in any way, if it doesn't harm you or harm others, and if it doesn't involve you coming up to my house, knocking on my door, and asking if I've heard the word of the good Lord Christ, you know what? I don't care what you do in your free time. If you decide you want to go to church on Sunday, hey, by all means, go for it. Have fun. Because, you have fun being deluded and lied to. But, no, once again, that's just my opinion. I do not speak for my fellow atheists on that issue. It's... Laws can regulate religion. Okay, that's a guaranteed fact. If your religion requires you to smoke meth and perform a human sacrifice every 2 weeks, no, ain't gonna happen. Not gonna fly. But personally, actually, if you look at it, that is kind of stupid though, because the original Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the national one, was designed so that way Native Americans could smoke peyote during their religious rituals. No, I don't believe that law should exist either. You know what? I'm sorry. Peyote is illegal for me. It should be illegal for you too. I don't care what your religion is. As soon as religion starts affecting laws, as opposed to the other way around, such as the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in Indiana, the more notorious one at the moment, the one that says legally I can kick you out of my business just because you're gay. You know what? No. I'm sorry. That just does not fly with me. That is not cool, not acceptable. And this bill that is being pushed through in Michigan, I hope and pray. I pray, yes. No, I really hope that it does not pass. And I don't think that it will pass, but unfortunately there are a bunch of people who will look at it and think, just maybe. Yeah. Just my opinion. Anyway, as usual, this has been Brain Power. The next show will be on Sunday, June 28th. And as usual, if you have a story you'd like covered here or a question you'd like answered, send me a message on Twitter at BrainPowerUp. Use the hashtag BrainPowerUp. Like the group at facebook.com/BrainPowerOnline. Or visit the website at brainpoweronline.webs.com. And, actually, before I close out, I'm actually going to leave a little mini sound clip for you guys. A few weeks ago, Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy, American Dad, The Cleveland Show, if you can consider that anything entertaining, was recently given an award on television, for television. And I'd actually like to end things here with a little sample clip from his acceptance speech that I find exceptionally humorous.
1988. The word genius gets thrown around a lot, which is good because otherwise I probably wouldn't be getting this. But even taking that into account, let's put this in perspective here. Being called a genius in Hollywood is kind of like being called thin at Disneyland. This is not a bar that is all that high. And let's also not forget that I'm being declared a genius on the network that airs Duck Dynasty. This is a show whose cast members believe hurricanes are caused by gay marriage. I wish I were joking.